everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of the Simon Says Handicapping video show. Now, first of all, you may wonder what's with the garb. I've got the drab shirt on. I've got the hat on. Well, the truth is I just got out of prison. That's right. I voluntarily checked myself into prison last night after a horrible day at the track. I felt I owed it to you. I owed it to myself. And actually, as it turned out, it wasn't that bad. I spent a lot of time talking with some other public selectors, so it was a lot of fun. But today, I want to talk about pace handicapping. Now, I talk about this a lot, and this came up on Facebook when I talked specifically about a horse by the name of Uptown Charlie Brown, who made his first tentative steps down the road to the Triple Crown when he won the Pasco Stakes by 6 lengths, and a lot of people very impressed by the performance. I was not one of them, and the reason I wasn't is because in that race, Uptown Charlie Brown earned a minus 15 LSR. Now, what is an LSR? That is a late speed ration. It's my own pace figure, and it measures late energy disbursement. And since 1984, only 2 horses have won the Kentucky Derby coming off of preps that were rated poor. Now, obviously, this is not going to be Uptown Charlie Brown's final prep before the Kentucky Derby, but it just gives you an idea as to what that means. Now, the 2 horses were Swale in 1984, who really had kind of an excuse. He ran on a sloppy track in the Lexington Stakes. By all accounts, he really couldn't stand up on that track, so I kind of throw that race out. But the other interesting one was just last year with Mind That Bird, who had a minus 18 LSR, which is just horrible, and he won the Kentucky Derby. But here's the difference between Mind That Bird and Uptown Charlie Brown. Mind That Bird ran a minus 14 ESR, or early speed ration. Now, the early speed rations, and we'll put the scale up for you, but the early speed rations, the lower the better. The late speed rations, the higher the better. And as you might expect, there's an inverse relationship between the two. A horse that runs very, very fast early cannot be expected to run very, very fast late, and vice versa. So in the case of Mind That Bird, you had a horse that really did something fairly unusual. And I'll be the first to admit I didn't give him credit for it at the time because the late speed rations over time have proven to be more significant. In fact, another amazing Kentucky Derby stat is that in the past 26 Kentucky Derbies, 9 have been won by horses with improving LSRs. And typically there's only about 3 or 4 in every Kentucky Derby. So again, I typically look at the LSRs because they also give me an idea as to what horses are doing when the going gets tough. Because when the horses turn for home, that's really when you're looking for the horse to show you something. And if at that point the horse is retreating, you have a horse that not only might not fit today's class and or distance, but also may be regressing in form. So I use the LSRs as a form criteria as well, and that's why I think those improving LSRs have been so effective in Louisville. Now, back to Uptown Charlie Brown. The problem with Uptown Charlie Brown is that he ran that minus 15 LSR after a minus 5 ESR, which is just a piddling early speed ration. And in fact, these horses are typically some of the worst bets in racing when you have horses with slow LSRs that are closers because they have no ability to dictate the pace. At least if you have a fast horse that staggers down the lane, they can dictate the pace. And in fact, you saw that in another Kentucky Derby prep, the San Rafael, which was won by Conveyance. Now, Conveyance went very, very slow early, but to his credit, he also closed strongly at a +2 ESR and a +2 LSR. So in that case, at least he did something to give him another chance. With Uptown Charlie Brown, he could certainly improve off of that minus 15, but I sure as heck wouldn't be taking 3 to 5 odds next time. So to kind of graphically demonstrate all this, I thought we'd take a look at a race today. This is a very good example, I think. It's the Encino Stakes at Santa Anita. I believe it's the 8th race on the card. It is. And there's a couple of favorites in here that we're going to take a look at and a couple of longer prices that we're going to look at. First of all, I'm going to start by saying that I think this race is ripe for an upset. Now, I said that all day yesterday, and it was nothing but what I consider to be bad chalk winning. So take that for what it is. But again, I spent the night in prison. So today we're going to kind of do the same thing. This is a race that I think is ripe for an upset. I'm actually kind of excited about this race. Let's take a look first at one of the favorites in here, Stardom Bound. He is second on the morning line at 7-2. Now, this is a horse that many will remember from his great or her great juvenile campaign. but she really hasn't progressed at all since. IEAH Stables, they were the owners of Big Brown, bought this filly for $5.7 million, and so far it's been a complete bust. Now, she's coming back to Santa Anita. She tends to like Santa Anita, or we can at least assume based on her past performances. But if you look at some of her recent LSRs, not that great. Now, of course, you have the one that was on dirt last time, but that coupled with the speed figures, you know, she's a contender, but are you going to take 7-2 or possibly lower on a horse like this? Of course, she's returning to Santa Anita, and there might be some of that emotional support for her. Not a horse that I would want to use. Let's take a look at Just Whistle Dixie. This is another horse. When you look at her speed figures, which are pretty good, amongst the best in the field, but then take a look at her LSRs, and remember that when we looked at the Breeders' Cup races, horses coming off the dirt did not do well at all. So is it a horse that you want to take a low price on? Not for me. She does have some speed, but there's other speed signed up in here, and I would rather look at a horse that has some speed and some great leg kick as well, and that, without a doubt, is the number 11 horse, Spirit Seeker. This horse really, in my mind, should be favored. Take a look at the speed figures, and then take a look at the LSRs. And keep in mind, when I talk about pace figures, this is another thing that you have to look at. These are unadjusted figures. They're a measure of energy disbursement. And as you might imagine, that disbursement is going to be different on turf. It's going to be different on synthetic. It's going to be different on dirt. It's going to be different based on the track condition. Certain track conditions are going to require different types of disbursement. And I don't have a lot of time to go into this now, but the Sarton Group, Tom Brohammer, has done quite a bit of work in this area. And so when you're looking at dirt figures, typically they're going to be about 5 points slower in the LSR than a race, let's say, on synthetic or turf, and the same difference, except going the other way, as far as the ESRs go. Well, you'll notice that Spirit Seeker, is a horse that's got competitive LSRs even on the dirt. And then take a look at that last race on the turf where she posts a +3 LSR. Now, that race is going to be closer to what she's going to experience today, and you notice she handled it with aplomb. She's got the previous form to back it up. She's 4-1 on the morning line. She's the third choice. As I said, I personally feel she should be favored. Another horse to keep a very close eye on is the number 2 horse. That's pretty unusual. This horse is 30-1 on the morning line. Now, one of the things that people have asked me over the years is how I'm able to pick such long shots, like Tatar in the Belmont Stakes, Giacomo in the Kentucky Derby. Well, one of the things I do is I look at the figures to kind of guide me in terms of a horse's class. I don't look as much at what a horse did in previous races because, of course, horses go in form cycles. So maybe the first time that a horse tries a grade 1 or tries a stakes race, he just wasn't ready, he or she wasn't ready to compete in that race. Now they are. Now they're a little older, a little wiser. In our own lives, we can all look at times, maybe the first time you ever spoke in public or the first time you ever did anything. Were you as good at it, yes, exactly, as you were down the road? Probably not. Same thing with racehorses. And so I'm willing to overlook Pretty Unusual's forays into graded company because this is a different horse. You'll notice she's 4 years old. Of course, she's maturing. She posted the best Beyer speed figure of her career. Now, it's not very good. It's an 83. But nonetheless, she's showing that kind of progression. And take a look at the LSR in that last race. So everything to me points to Pretty Unusual, at the very least being competitive with these. We're not necessarily looking for the best horse. We're looking for a horse that's competitive. You give me 30-1 on a horse like this, that's fantastic. So take a look at Pretty Unusual because I think this horse could really spice up the exotics at the very least. And the number 11 horse, another very strong contender in here. But that's kind of the way you use pace figures. Again, I don't have a lot of time in a very short video segment to go into it. I am writing a book, and hopefully that'll explain not only what the figures are about, but how to compute them as well. But in the meantime, I'll try to do some more educational type segments on what the pace figures are, what they mean, what they can do, and what they can't do. In the meantime, I hope you have a great wagering weekend. Take a look at this 8th race at Santa Anita. I think you might be pleasantly surprised. And if you're not, then I'll just have to spend another day in bettor's prison. I've done it before. Talk to you all later.